Hi, African Queen Mo family. How are you doing? Hope you're well. Yeah, it's a Friday. Can you believe it? Welcome, one, welcome all. We are on live again. Yep. This time I've had to actually advertise a little bit more and let people know that we're here. The last time that some people were watching, I think, first of all, let me wait and get a few people to come in. Let me see if I can invite a few people before I start because I see that there's really no one at the moment. If you're watching later, like after the live show, just understand that this is a live show and it's recorded, and therefore we had to wait a little bit, for people to join the show. Yeah. Okay. So basically, today we have a live show, and it's a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about security. Security is a global concern. And yeah, we actually have Susan on here as well. She's in backstage. Security is a global concern. I'm sure you all are concerned about the security of Kenya right now. And especially if you're in Kenya, the security of Africa. If you're an African living abroad, of course, you have security concerns for your country, right? Kenya actually got the status of a non-NATO ally. And we're all asking ourselves, what in the world does that mean? So we thought, it's good to educate ourselves and understand what's really, what it really means. So why don't I invite we have Zapayoro on board. That's fantastic. In fact, he's the person who we need to bring on board here. Hello, Zapayoro. Hello, Zapayoro. It looks like we're having a problem with.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
I hope you can hear me because.
Hope you're not mute. Maybe you can send me a message in the
Yes, I
private
can
chat.
hear you.
There is a private chat in there. Let me know whether you can hear me. I think you can probably hear me, and I cannot hear you. But I think I'll just have to again disconnect this mic, or maybe try and see if I can work a little bit on the settings, because it's important. Yeah, it's important for me to be heard clearly. But I still think that you can hear me even when the mic is not necessarily on. So let me remove it for now, just so that at least I make sure that you can all hear me, etc. Okay.
You will hear me better now. Yes. You're on mute, sorry.
You can't be serious. I was welcoming you to the show and saying, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your language capabilities? Yeah, because that's, going forward, there's some very important countries that are in the limelight currently. We have Russia, we have China, America, African countries. We have West Africa. We have our good friend out there in Burkina Faso. What's his name? Traore.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
have President Ruto, who also has made a name for himself here in East Africa for whatever reasons. So your language capabilities really come in handy at this point. So I think it's good for the world to be aware about the languages that you speak, how you can communicate in many languages, and how you can access information and material in various languages, which is actually a huge strength and something that most of us Africans really don't have. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in languages a bit.
Well, okay. I am Zapayuro. I come from the Ivory Coast. It's a country in West Africa. It's a small country, a rather relatively small country in West Africa. Well, in the first place, I studied linguistics. I did linguistics, so it's a bit something normal, for everybody every linguist to speak many languages. Um, and the other reason is I am from a French-speaking country, and it would be fair to say that this English word, I mean, so many English countries, in terms of population in the first place in Africa, there's no, I mean, the English population, the English countries are much more English speaking countries. And in terms of population, there's a huge difference. The French speaking population is rather small. It's quite small compared to the English speaking population in Africa. So if you want to open your words, if you want to have access to what is happening in the world and different cultures, somehow you have to speak English, to have access. Yeah. So I'm a linguist, and I know about 9 languages. I know 9 languages, but I don't speak all of them fluently because it's not every day I have the chance to practice. Yeah. So French is my first language, and then of course I learned English at school, and German at the uni, and Italian. I speak Italian fluently too, and I speak Welsh. Welsh.
Say hi in Italian. Say how are you in
Oh,
Italian.
okay.
Greet our
Simply
viewers in Italian.
salve, salve or ciao. Come stai? Come stai? Yeah.
And what about in Russian?
Ah, пока.
Paka. Oh,
Yeah,
paka.
как дела? Yeah, как дела? Yeah, как
Paka.
дела means how are things, yeah.
Kadjala. Paka.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
And how do you say hello in Arabic?
Mm. Oh, well, marhaban, usually marhaban. Yeah.
Marhaban.
Marhaban, كيف حالك?
Marhaba. It sounds like
Yeah.
marhaba. Marhaban.
Marhaban, yeah, we say
Uh,
كيف حالك, like كيف حالك means how is your health,
كيف حالك?
yeah,
Marhaban.
كيف حالك, yeah,
Marhaban. كيف حالك? How do you
yeah.
say hello in Spanish?
Oh, Spanish is hola, hola,
Hola.
yeah,
Hola.
hola.
Hola, everybody. How do you say
Yeah.
hello in Swahili?
Ah, Swahili. Okay, I used to tend to say ujambo, ujambo. Mimi si jambo,
Hujambo, si
or
jambo,
yeah.
habari yako,
Habari
mzuri
yako,
sana.
yeah, habari
Habari
yako,
yako.
habari
Yeah.
gani,
How do you
yeah.
say hello in Chinese?
Oh, well, Chinese, I don't, it's not one of the languages I speak really, but I know that
Okay,
in
I will
Chinese
tell
you can
you. I
say,
will tell you how to say hello in Chinese. Ni hao,
yeah,
ni
it's
hao
correct,
ma,
yes.
ni hao ma,
Ni hao, yes,
ni
that's how we greet,
hao,
yeah.
ni
Yeah,
hao.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And how do you say hello in French?
Encore, oh, salut, salut à tous,
Salut.
yeah. Salut.
Bonjour.
Bonjour is good morning, yeah.
Good morning is bonjour. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So salut is hi.
Hi, yeah.
Salut
Salut.
is hi. Okay,
Yeah.
so the reason that we are actually discussing all these different languages, and let me bring Susan on board to the show. Welcome, Susan, as she comes in. The reason is because in the new dispensation that we're in, we have so many different countries that are like engaging more and more closely together. So we need to find commonalities in language and abilities to communicate. So right now we have a very important topic, security. And one of the most security, a language is also part of your security. If you can communicate in a language, it can actually probably save your life. How do you know? Isn't it? Yeah. So we
Yes.
say that, security is a global concern. And we wanted to understand, what is NATO? Who are NATO? We hear about it, but we don't really know much about it. We're not that educated about NATO, at least most of us. And it would be nice to have an idea about who is NATO and why are they there? And why should Africa be concerned about NATO or even interested?
Well,
Wherever you want to start.
NATO, yeah, NATO. The acronym means North Atlantic Treaty, the North Atlantic Treaty, yeah, organization, yeah. So it is North Atlantic. This means America and Europe, America and Europe, yeah. So it was about the security concerns of countries, European countries, first Western European and Southern European countries, and America and Canada. Yeah, and then later on, there were more European countries joined, especially countries from Northern Europe. Germany even joined, and then yeah, Eastern European countries joined after the collapse of USSR. So NATO was created in 1949 after World War II. Because when the European power, I mean, emerging power, Germany, was dominating, and then after the collapse of Germany, Germany was divided into two, by the way, and then the victors of the war were on one side USSR, the Russians who paid the highest price, millions and millions of Russians died, and by the way, it is a short digression. In 1945, a survey was conducted in France to ask who won. I mean, what did French people think about who won? What did they think won? Who did they think won the war against the Nazis? And the majority of French people said it was the Russian. But then the same survey was conducted way later. That was in the 80s, and then most French people would say, "No, it's America." So you can imagine the propaganda, the good job achieved by Hollywood in depicting the Russians as useless and the enemies, and America as the savior. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so the victors were actually Germany and Germany. The victors were USSR and the US. Yeah. So after that, after the collapse of Germany, as I said, now there were a competition, a very harsh competition started between those two powers in terms of influence. Who is going to be the superpower, domination, keeping an area where they have influence. And then Russia started sending troops to Eastern European countries to maintain regimes that were favorable to Russia. And then on the other hand, America also was trying to bring Europe under its control. In 1949, NATO was created by America, Canada, and some European countries like Denmark and Luxembourg and Belgium. And then more countries joined later. Yeah. So today, NATO recently, with I think some northern Scandinavian countries, Sweden and Switzerland, and I think Norway also has joined NATO. So now there are 32 members. And apart from those members, they also have allies, and that's why we're going to talk about Kenya. They are called Non-NATO allies. Non-NATO allies. They are not members of the organization, but they are they support the organization. They are designated by the US because the US is the boss in the NATO. The integrated command has always been in the hands of an American general, and the US is the biggest contributor. So the US is the boss. The US designates who can be an ally of NATO. But the difference between a member and a non-member is that Article 5 says that whenever a NATO member is attacked, all the NATO members must also defend that country as if they had been attacked. But when you are a non-member, you can benefit. The only benefit is that you can access very sophisticated military equipment, like Kenya can do that now. They can access. But U.S. has no obligation to defend Kenya if Kenya is attacked, and Kenya has no obligation to defend U.S. if U.S. is attacked. So yeah, that said, it's important.
Wait, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? It's very important. You just cut it over it very fast.
Yes.
You just said
Yes,
that
so,
as a non-NATO ally,
yeah, as a non-NATO ally,
we have
you
access
can,
to sophisticated military equipment. Okay,
yes.
but we don't have access. We don't have access to protection.
Yeah, you can have access to protection, but there's no
well, not
obligation.
really access. No
There's,
obligation. Sorry, no obligation to be protected.
yeah, of the
Mandate.
US and other NATO countries, NATO members to defend Kenya if Kenya happen to be attacked. There's no obligation, and Kenya doesn't have the obligation to take part in a war just because when a NATO member is attacked. No obligation. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So that
Interesting.
said, it's important to point out that NATO is not from a certain perspective not a defensive organization, because NATO has conducted many military interventions that were kind of aggressive. We remember Yugoslavia, that was completely broken apart in 1999 after NATO bombing. You remember the intervention in Libya as well that destabilized the whole Sahel region. That was under the Obama days. And so that's it. So then, in response, I would say in response, but anyway, they were all competing. Russia also created.
One question: are you saying that what we saw in Libya was a NATO event?
Yes, yeah. In
Oh,
Libya was a
okay.
NATO intervention. Yeah, NATO countries intervened there. The face of the operation was Nicolas Sarkozy, the president of France. But nothing can happen about NATO or in NATO if the US is not involved. So it is the US's decision to invade Libya that allowed it to happen. And we saw, I think, Hillary Clinton, after Gaddafi was killed, in a very famous video where she says, "We came, we saw, and he died." And she started laughing. So that's Hillary Clinton, kind of cynical way. Okay, anyway. So, but it's important to mention that in 1955, Russia also Soviet Unions also arrived at an agreement and made an agreement with Eastern European countries. Poland used to be part of that, and most Eastern European countries were part of that. The Pact of Warsaw. But the Pact of Warsaw was dismantled after the collapse of the USSR in 1991. Yeah, so NATO has remained, and it is still active. So some people wonder, why is NATO still there? Because the threat of USSR is gone. Why is NATO there now? NATO is just expanding eastward, and of course we should. It's no surprise, no wonder that there's a clash between NATO and Russia. Russia, who took over, who inherited politically from USSR in Ukraine. Yeah, so that's a crash. That's a clash between NATO and Russia. It's nothing else but than clash. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say. Now NATO is very active. In Africa, especially, where they have loads of American military bases, and they control. The goal is also to control, to make sure that they are present, like in Equatorial Guinea, in Ivory Coast, in a lot of French-speaking countries. I think there's a military. In the US or the UK has a military base in Kenya, and so it is a loss of sovereignty. It's a threat on African countries' sovereignty. Yeah, the presence of NATO, because NATO defends interests that are not African interests. Yeah. So now, what are we going to do? NATO has not. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute. On mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah. Before you go on, because it's a very complex subject, you'll allow us to ask a few questions. Yeah. Maybe you can stop and ask questions or something. Because, like now, you say that NATO is a threat to African countries. I think maybe we need to qualify that for YouTube because we don't want to get cut off. Okay.
No,
I
no, I
think you
said
need to explain
to the sovereignty of African countries.
sovereignty. Okay. What is, yeah, then we'll go back to define what sovereignty means. Yeah. I think that's important because why would African countries invite NATO to create bases in their countries if indeed it could be a risk to the countries? Why? Yeah. I think that's one of the questions I would have. But anyway,
Yeah.
you can go ahead. Go ahead and yeah.
Yeah, some countries like, okay, I would say Djibouti. Djibouti, for example, has a number of military bases. Not only American, they also have a French military bases. They have a UK. They have Chinese. But it is a source of income for Djibouti. Djibouti makes money. But apart from that, most other countries, it is under pressure that they accept to host a military base, either a French or American military base. It's under pressure. And so it's no wonder you see Sahel people like Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Mali, Assimi Goïta of Mali, and Chani of Niger decided to kick out every European or American military bases because they want to protect their sovereignty. Yeah, because if you are militarily occupied, you lose your sovereignty. If you host a foreign military base, you lose part of your sovereignty. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Any questions, Susan? Welcome, by the way, and maybe you want to introduce yourself a little bit and let him continue.
Okay, thank you. Susan Mathai, lawyer, mediator, workshop facilitator, also listening keenly to what Sapayoro is talking about, and I don't want to interrupt him at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well noted, Susan, and welcome again. And everybody else, you're welcome. Come in, join. Please invite your friends. This is such an important topic. We're talking about the security of Africa, the security of the world. One of the most important things, we need to understand who NATO is. And we have Zapayoro, who's an analyst, and he's helping us to understand. Really, this is for learning, for knowledge. You can ask questions. And none of us are experts, but we are learning. Okay, so let's learn. Go ahead. Zapayoro, thank you very much. Yeah, you were saying that Burkina Faso and the Sahel region have military bases. Go ahead.
Yes, I think, but funny enough, this year, that's in 2024, Kenya has been designated as a NATO ally, a non-NATO ally. Means Kenya, like I was saying earlier on, Kenya is going to receive going to have access to sophisticated military equipment. But it's important to point out that you can have sophisticated military equipment. You just need to buy the sophisticated military equipment. But the thing is that as long as America, powers, especially America, has the power, and France have the power to prevent you from buying your equipment. That's what was happening to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Whenever they buy with their money. They buy the military equipment. They buy a fighter jet. They buy planes. They buy tanks. America manages to to stop the operation, the transfer. Sorry. And they don't have access to the equipment, So it's been like that, So if you have sovereignty, to go and buy where you want to buy. So nowadays, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they are free now. They have their sovereignty. They don't obey anybody, any other power. So they go and get the equipment from Russia, from Turkey, from Iran. They got the drones, everything they want to get with their own money. So when Kenya says they want to have, if they want to have access, Kenya wants to have access to equipment, sophisticated equipment, they can buy, Kenya can buy the equipment. You don't need to be a NATO member to buy sophisticated equipment. See? So if you are designated, if Kenya is designated as a NATO ally, it means that this implies that Kenya will be not obligated, but we tend to have political stances, that are favorable to America somehow. Yeah. So no wonder that during the war, the war that was planned on Niger, the Kenyan president backed that war. He endorsed it, he even encouraged it. The intervention in Niger would have, of course, caused the death of many people from Niger. And I think I remember, if I remember, Ruto was speaking. He said that we want to fight for democracy because there was a coup in Niger. But just 1 month later, there was a coup in Gabon. And funny enough, the coup in Gabon was endorsed by France. And Kenya did not. The Kenyan president did not complain at all. He was fine with it. He did no longer talk about democracy. Yeah, democracy stopped being a concern. You see what I mean? So these are geopolitical interests and geopolitical. It's a geopolitical game. Yeah. So it does nothing like being sincere in fighting for democracy. Even the UN does not even say such things, like justify an intervention because of democracy. No, it's for human rights, protect populations, yeah, but not to fight for democracy. There's no law, international law to protect or to fight for democracy. Yeah, it's just an excuse that can be used. Yeah. You're on mute, I think.
I am on mute because I'm very busy trying to invite people to the show. Yeah. Okay. So I think Susan, in case you have any more questions, I think maybe you could take it from here while I answer some queries here. Just ask a question or two, maybe.
I was just thinking about the Ukraine war, and I remember there was a lot of issues about the Ukraine entering NATO. Yeah, and I think the Russians have they've also built up a body that another, and maybe you can explain why Ukraine wanted to join NATO and what the status is now, because we know what's happening in the Ukraine has affected the rest of the world and continues to affect the rest of the world.
Oh, yes. Actually, Ukraine wanted to join. Ukraine wanting to join NATO is a very delicate question because in the international law, it is every country has the freedom to organize its defense, but it clearly says that you should not ensure your defense at the expense of another country. So if Ukraine joins NATO, it means the US will have the right to use the Ukrainian territory to put, weapons, to install weapons there, missiles or ballistic, all kind of ballistic missiles that might threaten Russia. So that's the point of Russia complaining, So I think it's the same way if Russia installs missile ballistic weapons in Cuba or I don't know, in Colombia, it's a threat to America, and America did not allow it. You remember in 1962 between Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev. Kennedy openly threatened to start World War III if those weapons were not removed. Whereas at the same time, America had already installed ballistic weapons in Turkey. So actually, Khrushchev had done that in response of America advancing towards the Russian border and the USSR border. So it is understandable that if you threaten a power, that power is going to react. So I think this is something very not difficult to understand. I don't know why people are talking about, other things like, okay, freedom, sovereignty, and Russia also, they used a reason and an excuse. The excuse is the protection. I mean, this is a legal, it's the international law that says it. Protection of a population, the Donbass population. They were persecuted. It is a fact that they were persecuted since 2014. There was war there. There was a lot of massacre. There were a lot of massacres there. And Russia used it to intervene in Ukraine. But we all know that the real reason behind Russia fighting with NATO there, it is not really human rights, or sovereignty or democracy or blah, blah, blah. All that narrative is, just to blur the vision of people. The real reason is the geopolitical game between NATO and Russia. Yeah. But history.
Okay, coming back to
history,
Kenya.
If you want to discuss history, we can say that in 2014, there was a president in Ukraine. His name was Yanukovych. He was pro-Russia, but he wanted to find a balance between Russia and the EU.
At Tiananmen Square.
Exactly, trade agreements, and he eventually was ousted because America came to support the opposition that created a colored revolution to oust Yanukovych. So after that, I think Victoria Nuland and even McCain were there, during the riots and everything. So they managed to oust Yanukovych. So after that, they held the elections and they put a pro-West government led by Poroshenko, and then after Poroshenko came Zelensky. But it's important to note that Zelensky was elected with the promise to the Donbass people that there would be no more persecution against them, because Poroshenko persecuted them, and Poroshenko openly said that they are subhumans and we are going to crush them. He said it openly. Russian language was banned, their culture was banned, everything. We know that, and there were when Zelensky came, he promised to bring peace. The Donbass people voted for him. It's important to note that they voted for him because he promised peace. He promised some kind of autonomy for them, for those republics in Donbass. And there was agreement were signed in Minsk, and those agreements were not respected by Ukraine themselves. They decided to still attack and oppress those people. So Russia took advantage and intervene. So nobody is really a saint. Nobody is I don't know, fights for democracy. But the truth must be restored. That there were killings in Ukraine back from 2014, killings in Donbass, killings in Odessa. Many pro-Russian, pro-Soviet people were killed in Odessa. This is a fact, Yeah. So just a fact, yeah.
Susan, do you have any other question about that, about NATO? Because I know we might have to be allowing him to leave very soon. How are you doing in terms of time, Zapayoro?
Yes, yes, I'm afraid I have to listen, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can hear some noise in the back. He's a trainer. Okay. So,
oh, yes. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
One more question. You mentioned about Kenya's in fact, I saw Meg Whitman is saying that you mentioned it about the status of Kenya, the relationship between Kenya and the US and its non-ally. What's
non-NATO ally, yeah, non-member but ally.
Yeah. So, is the Trump administration likely to continue that agreement or arrangement, or what's the status now on that for Kenya?
Oh, yeah, it's an advantage for America anyway. I don't think Trump has any interest in removing Kenya from it. If Kenya has been loyal to America, I think Trump is going to keep it. And of course, personally, I'm not. NATO is not my cup of tea, but I think the most important thing for me, it is for African countries to be free to build alliances with whoever they want for the interest. So if Kenya think that they can they have an interest in building an alliance with NATO, yeah, it should be free to do so. But the same way, if Kenya wants to build an alliance with Russia, please let nobody come and say, well, blah, 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 blah. That's complaint because Kenya is building an alliance, or Burkina Faso or Mali is building an alliance with Russia. It's about interest. It's about geopolitics. Yeah.
So how because we saw also in Kenya there was bilateral talks with the Chinese, and there was an appeal. It was reported in the news. There was an appeal by the Kenyan president, for China to help Kenya to join the BRICS nations. So can the two coexist? Can the relationship with the US and the NATO nations and the relationship with the BRICS, can they coexist at the same time, or does a choice need to be made?
Yes, some people, especially some Pan-Africanists, believe that you cannot be friends with America and the multipolar world. Well, but in reality, it's happening. Amongst the non-NATO members, you have Brazil. Brazil is one of them. Brazil is one of the founder of the BRICS. Yeah. You have Egypt. Egypt has recently joined the BRICS, but they are a NATO ally. You have Turkey. Turkey, a key NATO member that wants to join the BRICS. You have Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a NATO ally, but they want to join the BRICS. So it is possible to do that because the BRICS, I think, it should be put to the credit of the BRICS because they are kind of very open. They don't stop you because you have friends too. Like Mandela was saying, it's not because that person is your enemy that they have to be my enemy. Because Western media, Western powers were complaining that Mandela had good relationship with Libya. And he said, it's not because Libya is your enemy that Libya has to be my enemy. That way of patronizing African countries. So the BRICS are very open. You can be a NATO ally, even a NATO member, and join the BRICS. You can see it with Turkey, and
Yeah.
So Kenya. I think we have entered a period of history where Africans have options again, and that's what a good thing about the
So
Cold War. It was a good thing about the Cold War. Africans have options. That's why somebody, you might ask
yeah.
yourself questions when
So
you hear somebody like Mo Ibrahim say that the Cold War was the worst period in African history, even worse than colonization. Mo Ibrahim said that. So you should ask yourself question about the
yeah.
motivation of Mo Ibrahim, you know. We have
Mm-hmm.
options. It's a great thing. During the Cold War, Africans had options. Now we entered a new period where
Yeah.
Africans have options again. That's great.
Okay, for the benefit of those listening, can you just tell us what BRICS stands for, please?
Oh yeah, BRICS. Yeah, I think it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But now it has
Yeah.
become the BRICS Plus. Because now
Okay.
it is not only those countries, those powers. Now you have so many countries that are joined. In Africa, you have Ethiopia and Egypt, because
Yeah.
both of them were already starting a conflict. So Russia managed to bring them both there so that they have a platform where they can negotiate and talk. The same between Saudi Arabia and Iran. They brought both of them to the BRICS so they can talk there. So the BRICS is really contributing to peace, establishing peace in the world, by, monitoring those conflicts, between countries, Russia and, first China and India, there was a conflict at the border. Thanks to the BRICS, now they managed to solve it, to find an agreement. Saudi Arabia and Iran, same. Now Ethiopia and Egypt, because of the Nile, the problem with the dam on the Nile. Yeah, it was a problem.
Yeah.
There was a problem there. Yeah. So that's a good contribution for peace. Yes.
Wow.
So
Yes.
can you construct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
the BRICS, the BRICS nations, that agreement, the BRICS. So how would you classify it? With the NATO is one thing. What about BRICS? How would you classify it, and what are the advantages to Kenya, for instance?
Oh yeah. The BRICS is not really an alliance for war. NATO
Yeah.
is for war. It's for security.
Yeah.
The BRICS
And
is
BRICS.
more for it's a mix of diplomacy, politics, economic issues, conflict resolution.
Yeah.
It's not an alliance for war. It's not really. So that's different. So, but they do have criteria if you want to join the BRICS. One of the things is that you must be sovereign. You must show that you have a level of sovereignty, your own currency, for example. This is the reason why Mali, Burkina Faso, and Nigeria haven't joined the BRICS yet, because they are working on it, but they are to get out of it. They are still using the CFA, the colonial currency of West Africa, the French colonial currency called CFA. They are still using it.
Yeah.
So you cannot join the BRICS and start to be a member of the BRICS of the bank. If you still have a currency that is controlled from by colonial power. So colonialism, it is something that is unacceptable, within the BRICS. So you must prove that yes, you are really sovereign. So Kenya is under observation. I think Kenya has its own currency, but is that enough? The BRICS are going to decide.
I think just one comment I'm going to make and let you go is that coming to the new dispensation, I read somewhere that Trump had stated that NATO members who are not paying, because they're all supposed to pay, they're going to be dropped out of NATO, and they started to worry. Is that true?
Yeah.
Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, he said it. He said it. But Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump. How he can be, very rough and straightforward. We're talking without diplomacy anyway. Yeah, yeah. It's a fact that they have the obligation to contribute. And not all of them contribute. The U.S. was happy to do that because the U.S. wants to be the boss. But now under Donald Trump, who is not very interested in that, yeah, he said it. He said it. So the reaction of Emmanuel Macron was that, okay, we are going to take our sovereignty and become more autonomous in terms of ensuring our security. But at the same time, he is pushing for the fight against Russia, which is not a European project. The fight with Russia against Russia, it's an American project. It's not it's not even in the interest of Europeans. They have lost so many things. The economy has gone down. They have lost provision of gas, cheap gas from Russia. They have lost so many things. It's not in the interest of Europe at all. It's in the interest of America.
Okay.
This war at your border, many Ukrainians are being killed, depopulated, the population, a lot of migration, it's really, really affecting Europe. So I don't know how we can still keep that, push for that narrative and say that they want to be autonomous. So if you want to be autonomous, you must change the paradigm totally. Stop, endorsing the American narrative and the American project, become sovereign in terms of ideology or ideas, politics as well. It's just talking. I think to me, it's just talking. It's not
Okay.
running.
Thank you so much, Zapayoro, for your time.
Yeah.
We'll let you go for the little few more minutes that you have there to do your training. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, really, really interesting. We'll continue this discussion. I'm sure everybody really enjoyed it. So now, guys, we're still continuing because we're only going to continue for a little while just to do a little bit of a news roundup. Susan will give us, I think. Susan, are you ready with your news roundup? Or should I start? Whichever way you want today. I could take it up a little bit, or you can. And we'll give you about, I would say 15 minutes maximum. And then we will 10 to 15 minutes, and then I can come in and wind up.
Okay. So good evening again, or whatever time it is where you are. I'm happy to do this roundup. I just want to go back a bit on some of the discussions we've had through on previous episodes or previous shows, and just give some updates. We've been looking at, and it's been buzzing, the news has been buzzing with information about SHA and the controversy and the disappointments or joy from it. So some of the things
Sorry,
that
Susan, I will
we picked
interrupt
up.
you. When you use an acronym, for the sake of those who are not Kenyan, they don't know what SHA is.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Social Hospital Authority, and it's supposed to be like some sort of
Social health,
that is
social health authority, or social hospital.
sorry, social health.
Social
I've gone
health
M instead of the Social Health Authority. Yes. It's like medical insurance, and Kenyans are supposed to contribute to it.
It's like the NHS.
The ones,
it's like the NHS in the UK, National Health
yes,
Service.
Yes.
Kind of,
yeah.
SHA. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Currently, mostly the people who are contributing are those who are employed, because they can be reached easily, because they have more structured payment methods. So some updates on it. Remember, we said that the CEO was suspended for 90 days. But what I've since learned is that prior to his suspension, the one of the board members, Dr. Zakayo Kariuki, resigned from his post. And some of the issues that came up, And with regards to the SHA rollout, was that there were like 2 postponements before it was rolled out on the 1st of October, and there was a last-minute change of staff in the leadership of the group, and some of these things caused some sort of handicap. On top of it, there was the system that we're using, the healthcare management system, was incomplete. And like I said yesterday, in a previous episode, I said they also didn't have staff, and then they were grossly underfunded. They were under budget. There wasn't enough money that was put aside for that. So there were a lot of issues that were, they were dealing with when they decided to roll out the SHA. Something else is that just looking at a report it was called a transition report by the Rural and Urban Private Hospital Association. Basically, it talked about the 100% of the service providers. This is now from the perspective of the hospitals, the service providers, said they experienced challenges using the system. And so these included patient verification, OTP delays, and dependent visibility. And remember, I said that the system, the healthcare management system, was incomplete when they decided to roll it out, and it cost the government 104 billion shillings. What I noticed is that outpatient care is suffering more than inpatient care, and the success rate for claiming outpatient claims was 9%. So basically, these are some of the challenges that we see in the system. Outpatient is more difficult to claim. The institutions are finding it more difficult to claim for outpatient than inpatient. Inpatient, they're able to claim for especially maternity care. That's what they've been able to do. So it's been a challenge. The optics are challenging. You can see the system itself, if it's incomplete, that is what has really caused, it made it really difficult for it to roll out. The other thing that we talked about was insecurity in this nation, and we've talked about security and NATO. Zapayoro took us through that, and we went back again. Something that came back in our news this time was the Kware murders. And remember, they were discovered in July this year, where unalived women were found in a quarry that was used like a dump site. And so they've done a recent report. They were revisiting it, and there's a report that came out called Kware, the Aftermath. And some of the issues that were raised there were very interesting about follow-up, and it seemed that there was some concern from those who are trying to follow up. They said of the 18 bodies recovered, 6 were identified. So still there are some bodies in the, that have not been identified. They said also there were issues with regards to support from there's not much news, let me put it this way, not much news is coming from the institution that's responsible for following up, and that's the police. The other thing, of course, is we're seeing reports of domestic violence. We continue to see that, and there's femicide, where women are unalived under various circumstances. The other thing that was talked about, and it's coming up a lot, there are a lot of discussions, is the economy, the state of the economy. And I listened to a very interesting discussion between the head of policy and research of the Kenya Chamber of Commerce and an economist, a lecturer in economy, economics and political analyst called Professor Iraki. And some of the things that they discussed was the tensions between government revenue needs and public tolerance. And if you remember the finance bill of 2024, and actually even in 2023, there were protests because of some of the things that the government wanted to bring out. So some of the questions that were asked was that, are we feeling the effect of the lower inflation rate? And what I discovered, and I was really excited to learn this, is that we need to look at this. What does inflation? What does a lowered inflation rate mean? And it's the summary of it, or the conclusion was that if inflation is going down, it means the economy is not growing as fast as expected. That means that there is a lower demand for goods and services. It translates to there isn't money. People don't have money to buy. So the question is it a good thing or a bad thing? So we can answer that on the chat. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? If we don't have money.
Yeah, I think, Susan, it's just like what we were talking about, if I might just say, before the chats come in and take over from me, you know. But basically, it's the thing that I was discussing before, that we hear people saying that, oh, the inflation rate has come down. It's now 2.6%, which is amazing, you know. And because in the UK, it's like 4%. I mean, it was almost 10% before Rishi Sunak took up. And then towards the end, he came down to about 4%. So, I mean, how is it that Kenya is at 2.6%? Really, you know? And the thing is, like you said, it's not necessarily an indicator that we have a healthy economy. It's probably an indicator, especially when it comes down so sharp, that we have a very unhealthy economy. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Today, I actually went to one of these big supermarkets. They're advertising, you know, oh, everything is slashed prices. And we have like a big TV, big radio personalities booming inside the supermarket. You know, you can hear the voice, you recognize it. And he's like, oh, go to, you know, everything is down half price, you know, come and shop at this supermarket. What? And I'm inside the supermarket listening to this, you know, and I went shopping today. But guess what? Yes, the prices were slightly lower. I did notice. But I did not notice a big difference in terms of the number of people shopping. I still didn't notice a big difference, you know, in terms of the number of people actually buying. I didn't see long queues. I didn't even see a very good indicator that we have a healthy economy is the number of baskets compared to trolleys. Whether we have, and in fact, it's gotten down to the point where people are holding things in their hands. When things are being held like this you see people are carrying, like the way men go shopping, yeah? Go and buy a shoe brush and shoe polish. Shoe brush, shoe polish. That's it. A woman, shoe brush, shoe polish, she'll have a cart and wonder what happened. At least she'll have a basket, you see. Huh? So when you see that kind of thing, when you don't see enough trolley shoppers in a supermarket, that's a very good indication that we have a very bad economy. Especially, you know, we know that it's right now around the middle of the month, so okay, we can expect that. But on the other hand, remember, for the past 3 months, almost going to 4 months, the county governments have not been receiving their funds. The national government has not actually been remitting funds to the counties. So what happens is that there's a domino effect, that if they're not paid, and you know, most of the people in the counties are really like janitors, you know, workers at the bottom level mostly, you know, they're not the National Assembly, they're not the MPs, they're not the senators, you know, these are the people, the support staff, I would call them the support staff. Those are the people that actually inject money into the markets, into the supermarkets, and if they are not paid, there's going to be a real ripple effect on housing. Yes, on housing, on renting, on food, on everything, demand for services, even education, even private education. So this is it. So like you said, let me not overdo it.
In fact,
Sally is saying something. Wait, Sally is saying something. Sally is saying so true. Shopping
Yeah.
baskets are no longer full like before. Mid-month,
Yeah.
end-month, same.
Yeah.
So true.
In
So
fact,
true. Yeah.
even the traffic is not as bad as it can be. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I noticed
So
that the traffic was so good today, which is really sad.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So one of the comments that came out, and this came from the host of the show, he said, "We're in a time where the falling prices, that's now of the goods, falling prices in a broke economy. That's what we're seeing. Falling prices, they've slashed their prices, but people don't have the money to buy." And the question the professor answered, he asked this question: what is bringing down inflation? And he said there are two drivers in our economy. One is the cost of fuel, and the other one is agriculture. So if and he explained why the fuel costs have gone down. And what they've said is that the demand from China has reduced. So the cost of fuel has gone down globally. So we're just feeling it now in Kenya. And then agriculture. There was a bumper harvest. I think there was a lot of food that came out. So the price of food, fresh produce, was, it was at a reasonable price. So the
Yeah,
problem is
I
that
think that
Kenyans,
one, we need to triangulate that one because, okay,
yes,
sorry to interrupt you, but let's think
yeah,
about it. Like I've been listening also to the local dialect stations. They're saying,
yeah,
for
yeah,
example,
yeah,
the farmers at Mwea rice, the Mwea rice farmers, they need a
yeah,
different kind of fertilizer from those
yeah,
ones, from the fertilizer that has been subsidized by the government. That
yeah,
fertilizer is used, the subsidized fertilizer is for cabbages, and you can see a lot of
yeah,
them in the market,
yeah,
maize,
yeah,
vegetables, but
yeah,
rice needs its own. So the
yeah,
maize farmers are buying subsidized fertilizer at 2,500 shillings a kilo or whatever it is. I don't know how much. And then
yeah,
the
it's a
maize, yeah,
bag.
the maize farmers
Mm-hmm.
and vegetables. But the rice
Mm-hmm.
farmers are still buying theirs at 6,000
Yeah,
originally. So what's
yeah,
happening is that we're having a shift where when they say that, oh, we put unga in your stomach. Again, the other argument is that they're making us think about just food filling in our stomachs and not
yeah,
thinking about other things like education,
yeah,
other things that are beyond the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is
yeah,
food. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think we need to triangulate this information. When they say these things, we need to double check and see whether this
yeah,
is true. So when you say that agriculture has risen, really what it is production of maize. Yeah, production of maize and
yeah,
vegetables, but not rice.
yeah.
Rice is still very expensive. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
certain foods are available at, there was a bumper harvest to them because there was a conducive environment for them to grow. So some food products were available, and basically speaking, the Kenyans don't have money. And why don't we have money? Because there's no demand for goods and services because we don't have money. So where has the money gone? That's the question he asked, and it said it's gone to taxes. That's one. And the second, it's caused by government borrowing from commercial banks, and the interest rates have gone up. So and because of that, the banks are very happy to invest in infrastructure bonds and all that, and so we can't compete. Wananchi cannot compete with the interest rates that the banks are now lending money at. And so he said, they said that, of course, government is saying that, oh, we're doing well, our economy has improved, they're giving all these percentages. But these economists were really were explaining actually what that means and why we're saying we're not feeling it. And the reason we're not feeling it is we don't have the money to buy. So our purchasing power is not there. So the one of the things, of course, was the
Susan, can
question
I
they
add
asked.
something to that? Susan,
Mhm.
can I add something to that? Okay, just wanted to
Yeah,
add a little bit there that there's been some unsubstantiated, I think. So there's some claims,
yeah,
okay, I've seen on
yeah,
social media, where they're saying that the latest that I've seen recently is that somebody is claiming on social media that there has been a heist of a lot of money from the country into neighboring countries in Kenya by
Yeah.
politicians. So that can also impact a lot on the reason why the money is not circulating in the country, because it's not here.
Mm-hmm.
It's being removed in a whole month. Now, this is unsubstantiated. Number one, we're not economists. Number two, we haven't substantiated it. But this is what's
Yeah.
out there in social media. So we're reporting it as a news roundup. Okay. Yeah. So we
Yes.
need to
Yeah.
substantiate what's happening with the money. Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Why isn't it in people's pockets? Why is it not circulating? Yeah.
It's because
Okay.
the government, one of the major things, and I think this has been established by economists, is that it's the government that has the money. It's not the people. We don't have access to the wananchi don't have access to credit to, it's too
Absolutely.
expensive. But the government
Absolutely.
has it. So they are borrowing actually money at a very high cost. It's very expensive money to borrow. And so
Let
some
me
of the
explain this
points
one, Susan.
that,
Just a bit about the borrowing. One sec. Sorry for interrupting you, but it's like,
no, it's all
helping
right.
me.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So I read about this because I was trying to understand it as an evaluator. Now, I'm not a financer. I'm an
Yeah.
evaluator. I want to understand. So
Yeah.
I saw that the government gets money from the Bretton Woods institutions at the rate that they lend it in the US, which is approximately 6% interest, because their Federal Reserve rate is about 5 to 6%, and Kenya government will get it
Uh-huh.
between 6 and 7% interest. Okay, so all the money, all the billions that you hear that are being borrowed from the World Bank is coming at about 6% interest USD. Okay, so what happens is when they put it into the central bank then sets a base lending rate to the banks. You see, it's like this. So they get it at 6 to 7%. The base lending rate to the banks, according to the CBK, is 12%. 12. That's like double the
Yeah.
rate at which they're getting it, isn't it? So they give it to the
Yeah.
banks at 12%. So the
Mm-hmm.
banks then now lend it to you and me at what? At 14 to 25%.
Yeah.
You see? And then what happens
Mm.
is that most of us don't borrow. We don't borrow. So what happens is that the government invests in treasury bills. Yeah, the bank goes and invests in treasury bills of the central
Yeah.
bank. So what's
Yeah.
happening is the
Mm.
money is circulating, but not amongst the wananchi. We are on the periphery. This
Yeah.
is a deal between the international institutions,
Yeah.
the governments, and the banks. So it's going this direction, yeah, and the rest of us are over here. Things are happening here, and us guys
Yeah.
are over here,
Yeah.
trying to climb up,
That's it.
and these guys are circulating their
Yes.
money over here. Yeah. So they're making
Yeah.
a killing, they're making a profit. So what has happened is, because of the constitution, and because I've seen that James Mwangi from Equity Bank has actually said that he's going to make an announcement to see how Kenyans can borrow from the banks. Why? Because the banks already borrowed money. Yeah, they borrowed money from central bank. They got the money. So what's happening is that because our money is tied to the US dollar, and because of BRICS, the US dollar is also dipping. So our what? The value of our shilling is coming down. So what happens is that the banks then feel that they can't hold this money because it becomes a risk to them, because they need to make
No,
money.
that's
So they try to lend it to us. So now they're going to try and
mhm,
offload that money onto us at a higher interest rate to kind of shield themselves from the fluctuations of the foreign exchange,
mhm.
from the value of
Good.
from the shield themselves from the fluctuations of our currency depreciation. Do you
Yeah.
understand? So if we
Yeah.
borrow, we really have
Mhm.
no way. Yet they know very well we really have no way to pay. So what they'll do is auction us off if you have stuff. So and right now, apparently, there are many bank car yards many bank car yards that are full of vehicles and no buyers, full of stuff and no so people, so the banks are getting, taking the cars away from people, putting them in their yards, but there's no one coming to buy. It's
Yeah.
such an
I was just
interesting
going to say,
thing.
mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going I was going to say that the dollar, the dollar to Kenya shilling um, rate, the Kenya shilling is sort of holding its own. It's come down and it's sort of holding its own. It's dropped just a little bit recently, but it's sort of in the same region. So if the government has said we have brought down the dollar rate. Actually, if I'm not wrong, the beginning of last year, 2023, the Kenya shilling to the dollar was 120, around there. It was about
You're right,
120
Susan,
there.
because the central
And
bank
then
is the one. The central bank does
by
that.
the end,
Hmm.
yeah, and then by the end of last year, it was at 160, 160, over 160. You could get it at over 160. And then this year it has been, coming down. I think there
Susan, you're
was
not
an
very clear.
injection, or was it called?
Are you okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Glitched a little bit there.
Okay. You can see me. Yeah. So basically, yeah. So these are some of the things that we're talking about, and it's saying that one of the a statement that the government is making. I'll catch it midstream, but it says, when positivity is a reality, you don't need a narrative. So they were saying the facts are there for all to see. You can see we're doing better, but we know when an expert interprets them, it actually means something different. Because the question that economists and the two economists and were asking was that, so after we were explaining this to you, is the inflation rate being down a good thing? Is it a good thing? So they
You're
also talked.
glitching again, Susan. You're glitching. There's something about maybe your connection. I don't know. I missed you there.
Yes,
I missed you.
it's the internet. I'm trying to.
It's the internet. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Can you hear me now? So anyway, what they were saying is that the question again came out: how is public debt being handled by government? We know that they're trying to raise money through taxes, and one of the things they said is that raising taxes is not the way to go. It was suggested it's not the way to go, because there are consequences for that. And we're saying that some of the things government needs to look at is reducing expenditure in government, stopping the wastage through corruption, embezzlement, and losses. Um, yeah, when you raise taxes to reduce borrowing, that's what they're saying. What happens? There are consequences. We have protests, and then they made a comparison between the Kibaki government, where actually people were paying ushuru, and they were doing it willingly, and the taxes were not raised, and people, I think, they collected a lot of revenue at that time. So the thing that they should be doing now is reducing taxes, not increasing them. And what they should be concentrating on is collecting, getting compliance, and really trying to streamline the system so that they can also collect taxes from the informal sector. Right now, it's really challenging. It's the formal sector who feel they're paying all the taxes because it's easier to collect from employed people than it is from the informal sector. Of course, it has to be simple too, because an example was given about this e-teams thing that they introduced in 2023. The informal sector don't have that. But I heard in one of the shows I was watching, it was on Citizen, and they said they're trying to get one that is easier for wananchi to use. It's like USSD system. So yeah, so these are some of the things. Ease of doing business, of course, needs to be improved. There are too many things to pay for if you want to do business, making business very, very expensive. Then, of course, the last and most talked about was the Catholic bishops coming out with their culture of lies, and culture of lies unkept promises statement where they generally went through a lot of things that was concerning the congregants of their churches and the nation, over taxation, um, youth unemployment despite having education, then the education, the university loan scheme, CBC, so the SHA, and NHIF SHA transition, which is a problem, abductions, failure to constitute IBC, extension of terms of office. And one thing they talked about was the failure of they were promised that their bills would be paid. The faith-based organizations have hospitals. So there was a promise that bills would be paid and they have not been paid. So that was causing a lot of aggravation. So basically the government, in response, we had them saying, oh no, on NHIF, we have paid them some money. And then the police also came out because of the issue of abductions and femicide. And they said, well, we have two units. We have a specialized unit, which has been established under the DCI to deal with abduction, and their gender desks in the nationwide. And where there's excessive use of force by police, there's IPOA, which is there. So really, you can see the response from the police is not really preventative. It's more like punitive after the fact. So I think we still have a long way to go on that. And that's it for my news roundup. You're muted.
Sorry. Anyone want to say anything in the comment section, guys? Yeah, Susan. I mean, there's just so much going on, like I saw, there's just so much going on, especially when it comes to the finances, when it comes to the economy. Whose economy are they talking about? Are they talking about our economy, yours and mine, and everybody else's, or are they talking about theirs at that level? These people who have access to the money, the guys who sign the big deals with the big companies and the big lenders, and the ones who are tracking, everything going on at central bank, at treasury, at the banks. Excuse us,
Yeah.
And that's why they say that Kenya is doing really well with services sector. But then I also saw, like on social media, there was a little bit of a concern. I don't know whether it was true or not, whether anybody wants to confirm it, that some of the banks were limiting the amount of money that you could actually withdraw.
Yeah,
Between now,
I heard
yeah,
that
I
as
think
well.
you saw that, huh? But I don't know
Mm.
whether it's true or not. They didn't really substantiate it because some people said, yeah, they were able to go. But how do you know that it's just, we really need to
Yeah.
find out. Let's just keep our ears open on that.
Yeah.
And we have been told not to give fake information out there, not to sensationalize this issue. And I agree with
Yeah.
that, because what will happen is that there's definitely been a lot of withdrawals compared to deposits. But they're also saying the reason that there have been so many withdrawals compared to deposits is because people are now they're dipping into their savings because people
Yeah.
are not being paid. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're dipping into their savings. They just need the money. They need the money. They have a big, you also have many companies that are leaving the country.
Mm-hmm.
At least they talk about at least 8,000. There are very, very many
Yeah.
international companies that are leaving the country. And so far, I counted about over 4,000 workers are going to be losing their jobs. Procter & Gamble, they're big companies, that are planning to shift away from Kenya. And what they're citing is, like we said before, the taxation, the taxation policy,
Yeah.
and also the expense of doing business and wanting to get kickbacks,
Yeah.
the corruption in the country.
Yeah. It's really costing us. In
It
fact,
is
an
costing us.
example that was given by one of those professors, the
Mhm.
professor who was talking, Professor Iraki, he said, for instance, when he was paying NHIF, when we're talking about where is the money, it's been taken even through taxes from wananchi. So he was saying
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
when he was paying NHIF, he was paying 1,700 shillings. Now under shift, he's paying 9,000. And remember the lady who's been on YouTube, the renal patient. She's saying she's paying twice what she used to pay, and still she has to dip into her pocket. to make to pay for certain items. So it looks like this shift, from the examples we're seeing, is much more expensive, but the services people are getting are less. And yet it's supposed to be a step toward universal health coverage in this nation. So there's something fundamentally that something needs to be addressed, about it, because it's not perhaps working the way it was expected to work. Although the government reports are different, but we can see from the news and the churches speaking, and even the doctors themselves. Actually, in that report I talked about earlier, the clinical officers are saying they have to review the whole SHA thing. The transition has a very big problem. Even in Parliament, they talked about it, and they said the problem is the transition. And actually, they had actually thought about it, that it was going to be a problem. And yet, in Parliament, there was quite heated debates about that, and saying we said there was going to be a problem. This transition has to be managed well. And if when you're doing a transition and there are pending bills under a previous authority, you have to explain what's going to happen to the huge amounts owed, in billions of shillings under NHIF. So those are some of the challenges that wananchi are dealing with. And when you talked about multinational flight from the nation, their concerns are the lack of predictability. You have to plan. If you don't know how much you're going to pay, or how much allowance you have to give, what provisions you have to give, because the rates and the percentages keep changing, and the due dates on when certain things are supposed to be paid keep changing. That lack of predictability and simplicity are some of the things that have made it very difficult for businesses to thrive in this nation. So, and of course, the multiple permits and things you have to pay at the county level, they're not harmonized at all. So the cost of business is really, really expensive for wananchi. So again, because of this, the way the tax regime is the people in formal employment who are being taxed, and the informal sector is it's not that it's getting away with it. It's just that much more difficult to to trace them and to tax them. The big question again is the mistrust with regard to taxes. There's need for transparency and accountability. People want to see that they're getting services in return for the all the payments they're making and stuff like that. And I was listening to a public participation session. It was on TV, and the Mama Mboga said, look, these taxmen, when they come round to our stalls, when they come round to our stores, we're a little concerned because we just shut them and people disappear, because their experience with the KRA when they come round is not good. So they run away, they lock up and they take off. So that they have to change that. There has to be. Is it an image? They have to relook at their image, basically. So tax is on our mind. Unemployment is on our mind. SHA is on our mind as Kenyans. Uh, you know, uh, of course, the new, how the new Trump's administration is going to affect our nation again is on the mind of Kenyans. Our education system is on our mind. Our security levels is also on our mind. Our health sector is on our mind. So there are many things on our mind right now. So, we need to think about that. So even when we see certain things like Queen Mo says, it's good for us to find out what that really means. If a statement is made and you can't see it, you can't see it. And Kenyans are asking, so if all these indicators are there that we're doing this well and all that, how come we're not feeling it? Why aren't we feeling it? And that's the question that was asked by the professor, is that if the inflation is down, and we've told you it's down because there's no money to spend, the Wananchi don't have money to spend, is it a good thing? You're muted.
I apologize. Oh my God, I should just stop this muting business. Honestly, seriously. I'm trying to be polite. This doesn't work very well, does it? But I just received some very interesting information from one of our viewers here. And Sally actually sent me this thing about the layoffs going on in Kenya. Look at that. Whoa! A whole list of companies. More than 17 companies have laid off their employees in the last 1 year. All right. The last 1 year, that means just basically from January, right? It's almost December now. It's like November, maybe from December last year. And this government has been in power for like the past 2 years. So we've got several companies that are in here, including some of the ones that you know well, which is Nation Media Group has laid off some companies, and they're citing financial difficulties. Mastermind Tobacco, about 1,000 staff, which it's under administration. Kenya Posta, 500 staff, reduced payroll costs. Unga Group, 50, declining revenues. Delarue, I think Delarue are the ones who print money, I think, yeah. They're exiting Kenya, those ones. And then we have the titanium mining, which is the depletion of ore, 1,200. Radio Africa, undisclosed, they're restructuring. Tropical Brand Africa, manufacturing, economic challenges. Hey, Wire Product Limited, 178 people, financial difficulties. Cargill Manufacturing, 40 people to be shut down. Thailand Carpet, who doesn't know Thailand Carpet? It's a manufacturing company. They're laying off 300 people because of economic challenges. G4S Security Group, they are laying off people because of economic challenges. People can't even pay for their own security. Can you believe this? Yeah. BetSafe, these are betting companies, gambling companies. 100%, they're exiting Kenya, 100%. So let me continue with this because now let me start from gambling, because that was the last one that I mentioned. And I also picked up some information on that. There's a rise of gambling in the country, which is interesting. And every time you go online, you actually see, every time you go on the news, you'll see some people are winning 14 million shillings. That this guy called Francis Wanjiru, Shabiki.com. He won 14 million shillings. No, he wants to win 14 million shillings, but he won 161,000. Okay. And you keep hearing a repetition of many of these kinds of stories, but you see, you only find like about 1 or 2, 3 people who are winning. But the millions who are gambling, those ones we don't talk about. Yeah, we don't even talk about that. Yeah, so I think that is something that I think we already talked about that. Now, when it comes to security, why is it that these security companies are closing down? Is because they can't afford it. Okay. At the same time, we have a really big challenge in security because it's even affecting our children. Just the news just came today that every time I said I'm going to report on people who are losing their lives, we had 2 children whose bodies were found hanging on a tree, 5 years old and 9 years old. The perpetrator has not been identified because the children could not have possibly committed suicide. But their bodies were found hanging. Their necks were found hanging on a tree. In a part of this country. It's in a part of this country. Again, a lot of children. Ministry of Education has reported that this year they have experienced more young girls doing their exams from hospital beds because they're pregnant. So many young girls pregnant because of rape. Young girls, kids, 9 years old and between 9 and 15 years old, doing the exams in hospital beds. Yeah, pregnant. Yeah, we have another problem with insecurity. We have road accidents. We had in Kakamega, we had 10 people who died on the spot when a matatu collided head-on with a petrol trailer. You guys, you've heard these so many times. Accidents. There are parents there. One of them had lost their child. The other one had lost their husband. And this is such a big problem, because if the Shah, if the hospital, if the health insurance is not working, then what happens? And other people who are at risk are people who ride bodas, which is the motorbikes. They are saying that they want to be registered separately under the Shah because of the high riskiness of their work. Okay, but we also had stories of, for example, there was a lady who was registered. Some people have even registered on Shah, but when they come to the hospital, they are charged extra money. So this one young woman, very poor girl, she earns 600 shillings a month, and she was asked to pay 450 shillings at the hospital. Another person was told to pay 50,000 shillings deposit for a procedure, and they said that the money will be refunded by the government, but it actually hasn't been refunded so far. So apparently, the Alliance of Hospitals, ROFA, is concerned that patients are unable to get services. So 47 out of 100 hospitals are registered under the Shah, but most are not maternity care. They do not offer maternity care. Okay, so patients are having to go back to their pockets because only 6 out of 100 hospitals are totally, they said 6 out of 100 hospitals, 6 out of every 100 hospitals are completely unable, 6% unable to get into Shah. Okay, so it's a big issue. Yeah. Again, like I was talking about, this is Bello Kipsan talking about in the Ministry of Education, the number of pregnant girls gone up this year compared to 2023. Although cheating in exams is reduced, they have been warned about that. Although apparently it's the adults who are cheating in exams. So there's a decline in morality in our country. And the Orthodox Church also talked about this. Macarius Andreas, who looks like a Jungo, I'm not so sure anyway, but he said that people are facing a lot of obstacles. This is the Orthodox Church. In addition to the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church also spoke. Macarius Andreas. He said people are facing a lot of obstacles in their lives. They should respect their cultures, but they should combine culture with faith. These people are worried about the killings, the love triangles. He says that we have lost our humanity and only God should be allowed to take a life. He's concerned about the drugs in the society. A lot of children are being exposed to drug traffickers. And, and also things, and also the fact that, our culture is being eroded. I won't have to continue with what Susan said about the Catholic bishops, because I think she covered that well enough. Only thing I wanted to add there is that the Catholic bishops criticized the government of Kenya's in terms of political wrangles, which they're saying is generating unwanted tension and deepening divisions, creating an environment of mistrust amongst citizens and within the government. You see these politicians, they're always fighting, they're always wrangling, creating tension. They're talking about corruption, politics of self-interest, literally. Massive greed, they're calling it shocking. And then the violation of human rights and freedom of speech, So it's unbelievable. And then they're also talking about, let me see here. There's impeachment. Apparently, there's a governor who is supposed to be impeached, but then the people are actually against it. They're saying that this is not the way to handle problems. The governor of the county of Nyandara, or Kalau, Nyandara was supposed to be impeached for abuse of office. Okay, and all the wards, 25 of them, gave evidence of his abuse of office. Yeah, but then the people are saying that the person who is bringing the impeachment motion should instead sit down with the governor and do and mediate this, and somebody should mediate this rather than going the impeachment way. They said, let's forget about this impeachment. We just had the deputy president impeached. Yeah, so they're saying, yes, the governor should pull up his socks, but the MCA, it's an MCA who moved the motion to impeach him. They also believe that the MCA could be driven by self-interest. And they also say, and just about everybody, all the people, the public participants who were interviewed, they all said, no. Again, you can see it's raining. We have climate change. Although, having learned a lot from working with climate change groups, I'm aware that it's not necessarily change, because you have to actually get a certain number of degrees of change in climate before you can call it a change. What they actually talk about is climate variation. We have a lot of climate variation in the country, and we have been warned that Nairobi, Kiambu, Kirinyaga, Nyandara, Kajiado, Narok, places like that, we're going to start having very serious rainfall, and it started yesterday. And so there is flood alerts. So you can imagine the people who are living in the lowlands, what's going to happen to them. Just the other day, there was flooding earlier, I think in July, and a lot of people lost their houses. They were moved and they were not compensated. But I believe Susan can tell us about what the courts have said about compensation of the victims of flooding, the people who lost their homes. Yeah. Susan, would you want to say something there rather than me just keep on talking here?
Okay. Yeah, so I have to check that maybe next meeting. Next.
Okay, yeah, you check that. And let me take a
podcast.
comment by Fia. Yes, okay, no problem, Susan. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I just thought you might have be aware. Fia is saying, we are also seeing, Fia lives in the UK. She's saying, we are also seeing companies in distress here in the UK. Some are cutting hours, laying off staff due to tax changes. Wow. And then she's also saying, I was thinking about food security due to Brexit. We are reliant on imports, which are now expensive, which is so, so true. And, you know, Susan, when you're talking about agriculture, contributing to the increased, increased revenues by the government, remember that they actually stopped macadamia farming. They stopped the sale of macadamia and also the avocados, yeah, which were coming from a certain region of the country, according to Kenyans. And so food insecurity is a potential reality in the West, especially for things like avocados and things that are coming out of countries like Kenya because of the politics. Believe it or not, it's because of the politics, the tribal politics and toxic politics that's going around. And so it could impact negatively on the food security of people in the UK. I also saw in the UK, but this is kind of beside the point. I think I also saw fear that there's some farmers that are going to be demonstrating. They're going to actually withhold. There's a threat. They're threatening to actually withhold food from supermarkets because of an introduction of what they call inheritance tax. Yeah. So in the UK, the Labour government has introduced an inheritance tax for farmers. And so farmers have decided that they have actually proposed to withhold food from the supermarkets. Think about that. Think about that. That is serious power. These people are playing with the power of farmers. And many farmers are actually planning to quit as well. Yeah, okay. Let's just see here. I think we should be winding up, but the one of the things that you guys should be really aware of is about our budget. When we talk about the economy, let's talk about it with figures here. The Kenya budget for 2023-2024 fiscal year is 2.6 trillion shillings. And it's actually 15% of the country's GDP. Okay, that's our budget. 15%, 15.8% of the country's gross domestic product. Okay, so this they say is an increase from 2.2 trillion in 2023. Sorry, in the previous year, I think 2022, 2023. Yeah. So they're saying now the budget for 2024, 2025 is projected to increase to 4 trillion. So guys, we're moving from 2.6 trillion no, from 2.2 trillion 2022, 2023 to 4 trillion, yeah, in 2024, 2025. Now you see this is the budget that the government has given itself, yeah, and they're planning to fund 3.4 trillion in revenue collections, which is through taxes. And this is the reason why we're experiencing high taxes. I mean, high tax. We're being charged taxes, but they're not actually going to be able to collect as much as they're saying. And then they're also planning to the rest of it is going to be 597 billion will be through borrowing. I think Jimmy Wanjigi has warned us about this already, that we're looking at a potential, we're looking at odious debt. And we're looking at a potential big problem over the next, he's actually saying probably for the next 2 or 3 months. We're looking at debt and potential debt default. Debt default would definitely be a very big risk to us because it would affect the money that you have in the bank. And so that's the reason why a lot of people, you see these shifts and these warnings from people not to over sensationalize things, because it can actually make people go into some sort of panic, But they're saying that one of what people are saying, what the governors are saying, is that there should be prioritization of what's important. They should just prioritize what's important to Kenyans, because they say people. Here is another very interesting statement that was made today. People don't eat mathematics; they eat food. It goes to show the fact that people don't actually trust the statistics that are coming from the government in terms of our economy. People don't eat mathematics, because if your mathematics is not matching with their pocket, it doesn't make any sense. So the government's claim on economic growth, using statistics, is meaningless to the people on the ground.
Yeah.
Completely meaningless.
But,
People do not eat mathematics. Yeah. Hatukuli
we've
mathematics.
explained why. Yeah, because we don't have the money. The money is with government.
Yeah.
In fact, the taxes that they're the ones borrowing, they're the major creditors in the banks, and then they're taxing us again. So they're reducing the amount of money people have, and the taxes are so
Yeah.
high. You can see that for the NHIF payment was 1,700, and then under shift it's 9,000 per
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's per year, and that's one person, and that's a difference if you do the maths. It's a lot. I just wanted to comment about, I think the impeachment of the deputy president really stirred up a hornet's nest, if I can say that, because what has happened is that there's so many things that you can sort of connect directly as being effects of that. The rumblings and the changes and the shifting, the whirlwind type of shifting in the political class. Now, those who voted, especially in some regions of this nation, they categorize them. So the Mount Kenya region MPs who voted yes for the former deputy president's impeachment are facing trouble at home. So apart from not being able to go there, like the Shungwas, and there's one from Nyeri town they cannot go to there. There's a lot of problems. There's the issue of recall of MPs. So I saw the MP for, is it Madeira? As an MP, the constituents are moving to have him recalled from Parliament, and that's a constitutional structure that can be used. Is something that can happen. And I think we're likely to see some of these things happening. Apart from the fact that we have already been pushed into. The mood is that we're sort of preparing for an election because of all this repositioning and changes, and everybody's trying to look and see who will be the next, opposition leader, and then the tensions within the parties because of some of these things, not agreeing on certain issues. So we're going to see a lot of that dynamics, and I think that's why the bishops talked about it, because they can see it as sort of destabilizing, and maybe it'd be good for us to think about the effects of some of the actions that we take. The effect, I don't know whether this was envisaged at all, that if they go, the political class goes down one direction, they're actually going to start to lose their authority over the people because people don't trust them. For instance, in a what do you call it, a function, a public function, you can see the people saying, we don't want to hear that one, we want to hear somebody else. So the mic has to be handed over to somebody else. So for instance, the example I'm giving is I think it was the homecoming or the Thanksgiving of Gladys Wanga, because she's now the incoming chair of ODM, because John Badi was appointed to, he's now the current treasurer. No, he's the current cabinet secretary for the treasury. And so there were two individuals there. There was one called Otiende Omolo, who had the microphone, and the crowd could see Babo Wino there. So they started chanting Babo Wino's name, and this other gentleman who was holding the mic could not speak. He had to hand over the microphone to Babo Wino. So the two gentlemen were seen differently in the whole Gachagua thing. Otiende Omolo was seen as somebody who was pushing for his impeachment. Babo Wino kept away from it. He didn't even attend. He didn't even vote on it. He was not there. So that whole thing, you can see it, political analysts were suggesting that is a reflection of how the sentiments of the people on the ground, that, to sort of shown us something about the people we put in parliament. So that shifting, that renewal, that new view of things, even the fact that, I think also Parliament, if they learn well, they'll know not to take public participation as a joke. They'll take it seriously, because some of them are going to be recalled because they didn't take it seriously and stuff like that. So I think this is is a season of learning for us as a nation. And I hope that, we are learning the right lessons, from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a real season of learning. I mean, even you just put on, even, when you wake up in the morning, you'll see something else. Another group of people are saying this, another group of people are saying this, and people are coming out in groups to make sure they're heard on points and issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's just so much that going on in Kenya, but today really the main topic was the issue of the NATO Alliance. For those of you who joined us a bit late, I would encourage you, when you have time, to go to the beginning part of this video and watch it from the beginning, because we had a different guest on here. Zapayoro was explaining very well about NATO. I learned a lot today about who are NATO and what does it mean to be a non-NATO ally as a Kenyan. I think I don't think it really means very much, does it? I don't really think so. Yeah. And I think, we've got a lot of thinking to think about. We've got a lot of thinking to do. We need to learn. I think everything is just about learning. Nobody stops us from learning and asking questions. It's important. And I think we learned a lot. But I think, cost of living is a problem for us. We can talk about what's going on in the news, but the question is what's going on in our lives? What's going on with us? We have a lot of Africans who are living, Kenyans who are living here on the continent, here in the country, here in this country, who cannot afford a meal. They can't afford 2 meals, on the table for their families. It's actually a big concern. And you can see it. You can see the desperation in people's eyes. And that really makes me worried, because if you go into a supermarket and you're the only one who's walking around with a cart, you'll be singled out. And I think this is the same also in the UK. I noticed it a lot when I was in the UK too, that it's not just here. Even in the UK, you'll notice that even if people have carts, they're not as full as they used to be. And you'll see a lot of elderly people who are on pensions just picking one tiny little thing in baskets. It was actually a very sad sight in the UK, especially because when you think about the cold. Now, when you think about Kenya, we're in this season, it's flooding, it's cold, people's energy needs are going to be higher, people's food needs are going to be higher, yet they can't afford the food. People cannot afford food. This government should be very, very careful about, leading a country of people who cannot eat. Because the situation when it comes to, like, for example, the county governments are responsible for providing security at the level of the counties. But if you're not going to release their money, then it means that the people, actually in some counties, people are actually securing themselves. Like residents are going out and standing guard because of the number of incidences that have increased. There's a great increase in insecurity, especially in Mashinani. Yeah. So where they can't afford these guys. You see people like G4S. G4S are a security company, courier and security company. So what that means that if they're laying off people, it just goes to show that even companies can no longer afford them. If the big companies are leaving, that's it. They're not going to be using these courier services. They're not going to be using the guards. All these guards are going to be jobless. And it's not like they earn a lot of money. They don't. These are people earning less than $200 a month. So if they don't have money, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? This inequality is very high risk, extremely high risk for all Kenyans. So I think that we should be actually following the money and getting the government to be accountable. The government must be accountable. And the idea of lending money to people who can't pay, especially these banks, that's actually putting Kenyans in more debt. Really. It's the same way, like, the IMF would be lending Kenya money, knowing full well that it can't repay its loans. Because if you're starting a project and you can't finish, for example, or you're starting a project and you don't have enough money, you can only borrow this amount of money. Oh boy, And it's not like you can go to the mobile lenders to go and borrow huge amounts of money. That one is just like basically pocket change. Yeah.
Debt
So
trap.
anyway,
Debt
yeah,
trap.
you can only borrow like up to
Debt
200,000.
trap.
You can't borrow billions. You can't borrow millions. You can't go there and say, I want 30 million from Safaricom. You can't do that. I want 10 million. I want 5 million. You can't do that. So you have to still go back to the bank. And the bank's conditions are very bad. Very, very, very bad. I can tell you that. Because if you're going to be paying loans at 18 to 21 to 25%, you're not going to be afford the repayments. You're not going to be able to afford the repayments. So what's going to happen is many people are just going to hold back. And I think that we should be concerned, because if people cannot eat, that is the worst place. That's one thing I think I can say when I compare, for example, Moi's regime and all the other regimes compared to this one. They cared a lot. Not just unga, not just what they say at unga. Not everybody eats ugali, by the way. In fact, a lot of people don't even eat ugali much anymore, because there's a big rise in a spike in kidney disease because of diabetes. Diabetes is a big problem, a big concern in Kenya, and we can't get the treatment. So a lot of people are eating more vegetables. People are very careful with what they eat. So it's not just about saying that ugali is cheaper. No, many people are not eating this ugali. And in fact, it's not even that much cheaper. It needs to be very, very, very cheap. When I visited Morocco, bread was literally free. Bread, these buns, these beautiful buns that we love. They're bread, olives, and oil. Bread, olives, and oil is almost free in Morocco. Almost. It's everywhere. Even the poorest person can just go to a shop and just pick bread. Just pick, and it's really nice. These long French loaves. Yeah, they eat them. So at least people's energy needs are taken care of. But us guys, our government, I don't even know how they sleep at night. I do not know how you can sleep at night with billions in the bank, knowing that just across your fence is a poor person who can't feed their child. This is the immorality that the Orthodox Church is talking about, the lack of humanity where we've come to. We have children who are getting impregnated by older men, yeah, and it's a big problem. So we need to keep on talking and agitating, guys. It's not just about complaining. Yeah, we need to bring our voices as women to this, and as men too. We need to bring our voices here and not just complain, but come up with solutions and also educate ourselves. Susan, did you say something about educating our group at some point? You said something about, anyway, I won't reveal what Susan wants to do. I think she wants to do some training of some sort. And from this particular channel, you're soon going to have access to trainings, guys. Trainings that you have to pay for. We're not going to charge you. We're just going to train you, yeah, on a few things, so that we learn how to resolve some of the problems that we have in society. because we do have these skills. We have the skills, but there are no people employing us out there. Yeah, but we have skills, serious skills. And Susan has major skills. And so we're going to bring the training here. We're going to ask you to contribute if you want, but we're not going to charge you like outright because we want everybody to benefit. Yeah. So we'll let you know in advance when the trainings are going to start and what topics we're going to train you on. Yeah. And you can also let us know what you want to be trained on. If there are specific things that you want to be trained on, and we'll let you know, because we know that we can bring people. And also we're going to bring a counselor very soon. We've been looking for that counselor to come on board, but I think she's busy. Okay, thank you for your time, guys. Susan, last words?
Thank you for taking the time to listen in on the conversation. We look forward to your input. If you're not live, please comment on the write something in the comment section. Queen Mo will get back to you with it on it. And if it's something that we can discuss in the next session, it will come up. Thank you very much. As always, it's been an interesting conversation. See you next time.
For those our die-hard supporters, Fia being the top of the list, thank you so much for being here. Sally also. Thank you so much, Sally, for sharing such information. Fia as well. It's always nice when you guys share information because you see, you enrich our discussion and you also confirm that what we are saying is true and accurate. You know, it's very important. So thank you very much, guys. And we hope next time that Mato is also going to join us at some point because we're missing him. He needs to come on here and ruffle our feathers. Ask crazy questions. So, but anyway, yeah. So you guys have a good night. I know it's late now. Enjoy your weekend and bye-bye to see you on Monday. To-dos. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.